we are mildly interesting guys, and we talk about some stuff. So welcome to the podcast, we call it Joel the Podcast. It's Alex and it's Alex, here for Joel the Podcast. Bzz. Hello everybody, I'm Alex.
And I'm Alex.
And this is our podcast,
Joel.
Welcome to episode 91 of Joel the Podcast.
Absolutely correct.
I know because when I was making the document to summarize the advice, I had to put episode 91 advice. So I had to check.
We did our research in advance this time.
Yep. I wanted to remind everyone that Nathan owes me $4.
I thought you might have forgotten by this week.
I will never forget.
Alright, Alex doesn't owe me any dollars, and probably one of these weeks I should attempt to remember to pay. I feel like, I part of the fun, at least I think this, I don't know if you ever kind of did this subconsciously, is that I don't feel like I should pay you on the podcast. I feel like I should organically remember throughout the week. Because that'll give them, if I just paid you $4 right now, then all the excitement is gone, right? Nobody owes anybody any dollars anymore.
Mm-hmm.
But keeping in mind the odds of me thinking about the podcast during the week and remembering especially that I owe you money, which is something that I push down deep into my subconscious to the point where I genuinely expected you to say that I didn't owe you any dollars this time. I don't know. I feel like that spices that up. Any thoughts?
I was zoned out for most of what you were saying there, so
so probably I should
agree.
Just pay you $4.
Oh, you were talking... No, I remember. I absorbed some of it. So you're saying that you think it's better not to pay me on the podcast, it's better to pay me during the week. Yes. Yeah, I think I usually do that when I owe you the dollar. I don't necessarily care that much about it. I wouldn't be, upset if you paid me on the podcast.
Yeah.
But when I owe the dollar, I hate owing the dollar. I really do not enjoy starting the podcast and you saying, Alex owes me $1. So I usually, let it happen for 1 week just to satisfy the listeners. But after that, I try to, if I remember, I'll pay it.
Yeah. Okay.
So, all right. So you're welcome, listeners, for that. Sports. Let's talk about some sports for a minute.
Yeah, we can certainly fill a minute this week because that's the thing that we do.
Yep, and so many sports have happened.
Yeah.
Here we go. So, there's 3 sports going on right now, which are
Wait,
let
me name them.
Oh, yeah, go ahead and name them.
All right, it's basketball.
Yep.
And hockey.
Yep.
And baseball.
No, soccer is the third one, actually. MLS is going on right now.
Okay, so what's your MLS news? Is the
I
Philadelphia
saw about
team good?
5 minutes of an MLS game the other day.
Yeah?
And it was between LA and Seattle.
Okay.
And I liked LA's uniforms more than Seattle's uniforms. And if you've ever watched a soccer game, you know that nothing interesting ever happens in 5 minutes. So I obviously did not see anything interesting.
Yeah, that makes sense. No arguments here.
So yeah, I guess baseball is technically happening. It's just so minor that I totally forgot about it. This Phillies continue to be inexplicably not that good, which is very surprising to me. Okay, thank goodness. Wow, we have no sports content until the NBA playoffs. So
yeah, I'm curious if there is something related enough to sports that we're interested in, and I'm talking that we're already interested in. I don't want to be putting in any extra effort. But is there something else that we could conceivably talk about for a minute if we determine that the sports aren't that interesting this week?
Well, it is April and about to be May, so I assume that the Marble Olympics have to be like, I don't know how the selection for that works, because I know there is some kind of selection.
Uh-huh.
So that might be coming up at some point.
Okay.
Also, the real Olympics are coming up this summer.
Oh, that's right. Are they in... No, they're not in Japan. It was
They
going
are
to
in
be, right?
Japan.
But now it's not.
They're
Wait,
in Tokyo.
it is in Japan still. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Pretty sure, at least. It's still being advertised as Tokyo 2020, so...
Maybe they just advertise it as Tokyo 2020 because they picked up all the stadiums that they built in Japan and pushed them to
push them somewhere else.
the actual location of the Olympics.
Which
So,
is the middle of the South China Sea now.
I have to imagine that those two outcomes, which are the Olympics are in Japan or they took the Japanese stadiums and pushed them to the South China Sea, I assume those two things are equally likely.
Right, I would say that there's no other possibilities. Like, it's got to be one of those two things.
For sure. Yeah, so I'm really excited to see which one of those two things it is. Personally, I think it would really shake things up if they actually held it in Japan. That'd be kind of weird.
Why do you think that would shake it up?
It's just, I feel like the last Olympics weren't in Japan. And I don't think the ones before that were in Japan either.
That's true, but keep in mind that neither of those Olympics were in the South China Sea either.
You're bringing up some good points. And
by some good points, you mean the one point that I said.
It's good, though. And it's...
Yeah, that's true.
Really, really not something that I can argue with, so...
So let's not try. Did we get any emails this week?
I really thought we would get some emails this week because since last week we have posted 3 episodes. But shockingly, no. I just had to go check again just in case the answer was yes, but the answer is no.
It seems like based on that information, the more episodes we post, the less likely we are to get emails.
That is true based on this week and no other weeks.
So I'd say we got to keep that in mind for the future and be careful about it.
Yeah, definitely. It's got to be a balance, right? Because I don't want to lose too much Joel Lowe.
Right. But also, we have not heard anything about Joel Lowe since it was created, and...
Maybe David forgot.
Yeah, even though we mention it every single week, I think.
Well, you gotta remember, to us it's every week, but to him it's probably just one night where he listens to all the episodes since the last time we had uploaded a batch of episodes, and honestly, for most of that, he's probably not even paying attention.
I guess, but I feel like he's probably continuously re-listening to episodes. I would assume. So, it's that one night when he listens to them, but also the entire next day when he re-listens to the entirety of our podcast over and over again, so...
Yeah, that definitely seems like the correct assumption to make.
So, if you want to send us an email, you can do that, and you can find our email on our website, which is alexandalex@joelthepodcast.io/alexandalex@joelthepodcast.website/index.html. And you can find the link on there. Okay, well, I guess that about wraps up the intro. After a mere 8 minutes, and my phone froze. There we go. 8 minutes and a half. So we're going to get into the episode today.
8 minutes and a half they were.
So bad. All right, so this is... We have decided to do another advice episode today. Once again, as always, real questions sent in by real listeners who we will be giving fake names to. And as a reminder, we do summarize all these emails. These are not the verbatim emails, which tend to be quite long.
Right.
We definitely did not make these questions up immediately before the podcast started. So let's get into it. Do you want to go first or second?
You know what? Let's go first. And by let's, I mean me. By myself.
All right.
Let's just both start reading a question. And then we'll pretend that the question is a mix of the two questions that were read. That's a stupid idea.
Yeah, this question that you're about to read comes to us from Fran Light. Fran Light.
All right, Fran Light. Wow, what a question this is. Help! My roommate just found my candle closet.
Uh-huh.
She says it's a fire hazard and wants me to get rid of them. What's the best way to tell her that I've chosen the candles over her and she needs to go?
Well, I actually think that you worded it pretty well in the summary. I don't know how they worded that in their actual email, but like, yeah, clear, concise, to the point. I've chosen the candles over you. You need to go. That's pretty good.
That is a pretty solid response. I think if I'm being honest here, let's imagine that I'm the roommate in this situation.
Mm-hmm.
If Fran Light comes up to me and says, "I've chosen the candles over you, and you need to go," I've certainly nothing but respect for that decision.
Yeah, and I mean, I feel like, it's kind of hard to imagine because I know you would never say that a candle closet is a fire hazard.
Right.
But yeah, that seems like in the far-fetched scenario in which I am saying that, I think I agree that's, I wouldn't be mad at all.
Yeah.
So
it's tough. I mean, you could consider that, a potential red flag to where you might, this person might be overreacting to things.
What I'm interested in, really curious about, is, like, so clearly these two people have been living together for a non-zero amount of time. How did this person not know about the candle closet until now?
Yeah, that's actually interesting. So, like, how if you were living, let's start with this. If you were living with a roommate, would you just, like, straight up front right away show them the candle closet?
I would show anyone who came to my apartment the candle closet because, I think that's something to be proud of, right? Like, I would talk to people even who I don't live with or who aren't at my apartment about my candle closet.
Sure. Yeah, I can see that for sure. So maybe, I mean, honestly, this wasn't the question that was asked, but maybe we should give some advice on candle closet etiquette here. It seems like Fran Light maybe isn't quite up to speed on how you should be handling the candle closet.
That's certainly sounds like it might be the case. So here's some advice, Fran Light. Wow, I cannot believe I called this person Fran Light without knowing what the question was. That's pretty funny. So here we go. So number one, I mean, this should be very obvious, but apparently not. If you're living with someone, show them all the closets. Like, I guess, I know we've discussed this on the podcast because, we've thought about doing that Bionicle closet prank.
Right.
And we determined, I guess, that it wasn't really feasible to prevent Shelby from looking in a closet for several months.
Yeah, I think if Fran's, like, base plan here was just to not showing the candle closet to the roommate, that shows a pretty serious lack of foresight here.
Indeed. Yeah, so okay. So that's just basic closeting, like not even anything to do with the candle closet.
Right.
So if we then think about candle closets, I guess etiquette-wise, it's not necessary to tell people about it. But I don't know why you're having a candle closet if your first instinct is not to tell people about it.
Right.
I guess that's just what baffles me.
Yeah, it seems like a really old-fashioned kind of old-fashioned candle closetry, really, to keep it to yourself. Maybe, I always assume that our listening demographic is trendy young adults like ourselves, but maybe Fran Light and Fran Light's roommate are of the older generations.
Mm-hmm.
I've never considered that actually. From some of these questions, maybe some of these people are, old.
Yeah. So. All right. Thanks for the question, Fran.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm
Hopefully
getting
we
some
answered
messages
it
on this.
and
Getting
answered
some message.
some additional questions that you didn't know you needed answered.
Getting some messages. I'm just gonna mute that so I don't get distracted. Okay, so let's go to my first question over here. Who does this come to us from?
All right, this question comes to us from a listener named Kentucky.
All right, Kentucky says, "Dear Alex and Alex, I have a pet dog and cat, both named Joel, obviously. I can't seem to get them to get along. Whenever I'm not around, they fight constantly. Do you have any suggestions to help them become friends?"
That's definitely a tough one. Because I feel like we've all been in this situation before, right? If you know two people named Joel, have they ever gotten along?
I was going to say myself that, this has to be related to them both being named Joel.
Yeah, this is tough. Honestly, I respect the intentions here. Like, this is, you would think that this is exactly the way to go, but that's how so many of these things go wrong. I think maybe we need to consider some other names.
So, what's your number 2 name after Joel?
My number 2 name after Joel. Ooh, that's a tough one. There's always Greg.
Right.
There's always
can't forget about Jolene.
Jolene, that's a good one. Yeah, who are we to say whether these animals are male or female, right?
Right, and
That's
it might actually work to call one of them Joel and one of them Joel.
Oh, that's interesting. I was thinking Joel and Jolene, but then you would call Jolene Joel for short?
That might work, but I feel like it would not be enough of a change because you go from calling them both Joel to calling them both Joel.
Yeah, I suppose you're right. I don't know. Maybe the animals are not sophisticated
in my scenario,
enough
it's
to
a much
understand
larger change where you go from calling them Joel and Joel to Joel and Joel.
That's true. Yeah, I'd say, you know what? Both of those things are worth a shot. If you're feeling adventurous, you may experiment with other names as well. But that's probably the best advice. The best advice we can give.
Okay, and okay, finish what you were saying.
This was, I guess, pretty much the end of the sentence.
Yeah. So I thought it may be worth a few minutes. I know this is incredibly unlikely, but a few minutes to provide suggestions in case it's not actually the issue of them being named the same.
Oh, yeah. No, I honestly didn't cross my mind, so good thing that you brought that up.
Yeah.
So if there's one thing I know about cats and dogs, right, it's that they naturally get along.
Right. That's where we get the expression "as friendly as cats and dogs."
Right. Everybody says that to me constantly. I don't know why, but they do.
It's because of how friendly you are.
Oh, okay. Well, that's some good
news.
I always assumed that. To be honest, I don't know what I always assumed.
I was going to say, what did you possibly assume?
I always just assumed that they were reading the sign that I hold up all the time that just says, "as friendly as cats and dogs."
I thought they were just reading my clothing, every single piece of which has that phrase on it.
I have it tattooed on my knuckles.
And I'm constantly punching people, so they're reading it as they... Okay. So, go on.
Yeah, no, so this is really interesting then to consider what could possibly be the problem. Um, I'm sure this is very rare, but maybe one of them has a cat or dog allergy, depending on whether they're the dog or the cat. You know what I mean?
Right. That's possible. I honestly think that the only reasonable thing you can do when you have two pets that are fighting each other is to treat them like people, because, and what would you do if you had two roommates fighting, right? You would take one out back and shoot them. So
Yes.
I think that's kind of like what my first thought was.
Yeah, and I mean, at first it might seem harsh, but that's if you could tell me you wouldn't do that to solve a conflict between two people, then
At first it might seem harsh, but if you think about it hard, it's not.
right. That is absolutely true.
Let's hear the next question.
All right, who's this question from?
This question comes for us from Blanket McCouch.
Blanket McCouch also has a pet-related question for us.
Excellent.
Well, I was about to say this may be a bit of a theme, but it's the only pet-related question that I have, so unless you also have more pet-related questions, this is probably the end of the theme.
I do not have any more pet-related questions.
All right, well, this is something that kind of makes you think about a theme, but, really isn't a theme, because I feel like a theme you need at least 3 things to be a part of. So,
yes, and I already feel like we've spent way too much time talking about whether it's a theme or not.
Well,
and I
it's
think we
not.
should certainly stop talking about whether it's a theme, which it is not, as soon as we possibly can.
All right, we will certainly do that and start talking about this question from Blanket McCouch. I bought a dog from my cousin's friend about a year ago, and I'm starting to think he ripped me off. It was fun at first, but it's shed its skin a few times now, and it still doesn't have any legs. If I ask for my money back, do I have to return the dog, or is it legally mine since it's been more than 90 days? There's a lot to unpack here.
So his question is, if he asks for his money back, does he still get to keep the dog, right? That's his question?
That's the question, yeah.
Okay, certainly the answer is no. This is like dog buying 101, but the limit is like a year, right? You have to have the dog for a year before you can get the money back without giving the dog back.
It's interesting because they specifically bring up the 90 days point.
Right.
But they do say that they bought the dog about a year ago. I get the sense that they may secretly know the answer already. You know what I mean? They're trying to get some external validation.
I'm just curious, what kind of total moron is coming up with this 90 days number?
Yeah.
I know that's the number for other pets, like snakes, but this person clearly doesn't have a snake, they have a dog. So,
Right.
I don't know why that's, even coming up.
The only thing I can think of is if maybe, and I've never heard of this, but I'm not a. Let me just start off by saying that I'm not a lawyer, so this isn't legal advice.
Right.
But in my time in a legal practice,
Right.
I've never really come across a defective dog.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? It's
So-
always just been dogs that don't get along with other pets and need to be taken out back, if you know what I mean.
In your experience, I know you're talking about... Never mind. So in your experience, how long would you say it would normally take your dog to grow legs?
I mean, honestly, I kind of get where the concern is here, because for me, it's always happened nearly instantly. I mean, that may
Right.
be a bit of hyperbole, but definitely within the first couple of weeks, and certainly before it starts shedding skin.
Right. I feel like as soon as I say this, people are gonna think I'm weird, and it might be the case. But I've actually never seen a dog without legs before. Every dog I've seen, and to be fair, I've never seen a dog like just being born, but
Sure.
every dog I've seen has already had its legs. So that's what's a little weird to me about this question. Like, I know I said earlier that it's definitely not a snake, and I stand by that, but maybe it's like not a dog. Do you think that's a possibility?
I mean, if we there's probably a certain like favorable light that you could look at this in to say like, you know what, maybe that's not a dog. But you know, Blanket McCouch calls it a dog several times, so I don't feel like we can.
That's true.
I don't feel like we have the authority. I have to say there were no pictures attached.
Right. Okay. So let's say
really
this. First of all, let me first of all say that because of the 90 days thing, I already have no faith in Blanket McCouch's intelligence, and now you'd have to be pretty stupid to like mistake something that's not a dog for a dog. So why don't we assume for now that it is a dog with no legs that hasn't grown legs, and answer the question. Well, I guess we kind of already answered the question, which is the term limit for that is a year.
Right.
So it depends upon how close. You said it's been about a year. It depends upon what do you mean by about a year.
Right.
So that's my advice, assuming that it is a dog. But if it's not a dog, then as you said, not a lawyer. This is not legal advice. But you can legally sue the person that you bought it from if it's not a dog. Right. And in order to find out if it's not a dog, I would recommend taking it to a dog checker specialist. Because it's sometimes hard to tell, you know, whether it's a dog.
Yeah, certainly, you know, telling whether something is something else is a real challenge sometimes. So,
and if you really think about it, it either is or isn't a dog, so it's like a 50-50 chance.
Yeah,
since there's two options.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. There you go, Blanket. That's the answer to your question. Nathan, who does this next question come to us from?
Oh, this next question comes to us from Tapey.
Sorry, what?
Tapey.
Tapey?
Yep.
Like with a P in the middle of it?
Yep.
Okay. I wasn't sure if it was a P or an F. Okay, so this is what Tapey says. Dear Alex and Alex, I have a strong feeling that tomorrow I'm going to be late for my doctor's appointment. I can't explain how I know, but I'm almost certain of it. Is there anything I can do about this? Should I just cancel the appointment?
I really hope we got to this question in time.
Right. Yeah, I guess I should have checked when this email was sent.
Yeah.
Well, if you are listening to this after your doctor's appointment has already happened, Tapey, just... Actually, you know what we should do is we should just send this advice back in time.
That's a good point. So we'll just assume that whenever this podcast is uploaded, we've already done that. So not to worry, Tapey's appointment is in, I don't know, at least a week from now. So we'll be good there.
All right. So right. Two-part question. Is there anything he can do about it, and should he just cancel? Or she? I guess I don't really know whether Tapey's a man or a woman.
Sure. I can't really say one way or another. Let's should you cancel the appointment? I mean, my initial instinct is no, even though I can definitely see why you would want to do that. But sometimes it's worth the risk, you know what I mean?
Right. Like, I guess it depends upon, you know, what the doctor's appointment is for, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, if it's just a routine checkup, then you're really risking it for something that's not that important. You can just reschedule.
Sure.
But, you know, it might be worth the life or death risk if, you know, you're actually going for some kind of ailment that you have.
Yeah, let's assume, I mean, just because this is under any sort of consideration, I mean, it can't possibly be just a routine checkup.
Right, I assume they would. I'm gonna say he, because I don't think women have doctor's appointments. I would assume that Tapey, he would know that to cancel if it was just a checkup. So,
Right. I certainly hope so. I like to assume all of our listeners are intelligent, but I'm not too sure about Blanket McCouch, so now I'm questioning everything.
yeah. Okay, so right. Okay, so is it worth the risk? Okay, so is there anything he can do about it? So there may be something you can do about it.
Right.
If you leave right now, and I'm talking, this is a week before your doctor's appointment is scheduled to happen.
Right.
I would think it would be almost impossible for you to be late at that point.
And just to be clear, when you say right now, do you mean like right now as we record this, or now
No,
as
right
in
now
when Tafy is listening?
Yeah, right now as Tapey is listening, like, you can finish listening to the end of this question, but then you should just... Actually, you shouldn't even finish. You should, take the podcast with you into your car as you start driving there right now.
Right. I mean, the perfect situation, right, is that Tapey, after sending this, had a moment of clarity where he realized that he should just go and sit in the doctor's office starting right now. And so
Right.
maybe if we're lucky, he's already in the waiting room, a week in advance, just ready to go.
Yeah, if you are, good job, Tapey, and try your best not to get kicked out, out overnight. Like, you may have to hide in the bathroom or whatever.
Right.
So, is there anything else you can do aside from leaving early? Obviously, no. Premonitions like this tend to be pretty accurate if you don't change anything.
Right.
And should you cancel, as we talked about, that depends upon why you have it. All right, I think we have thoroughly answered this question.
All right, let's move on to the next one. Who's it from?
This one comes to us from someone whose name appears to just be a plus sign.
All right. Quite an interesting name. Plus sign says, my fiance and I got engaged 3 months ago. I've tried to start a conversation about a wedding date a few times, and each time he says he only wants to get married on July 25th, 2029. The first time I thought it was a joke, but he says the exact same date every time and sounds pretty serious. I don't know what's so special about July 25th, 2029, but I don't want to wait 8 years to get married. What do I do?
This is a good question. I mean, my first question would be, did you ask him why he wants to wait until that date?
Yeah, this is going to be a pretty awkward start to a marriage if you're not even comfortable communicating to that degree.
He may have a very good reason why he wants to wait 8 years to get married.
Let's spend about 30 seconds each speculating what that reason might be. I personally think he might think that the stock market will be more favorable at that point in time. More conducive to hosting a wedding.
Yeah, maybe he invested all of his money into Dogecoin, and he thinks on that date he'll finally have enough money to pay for the wedding. Like, Dogecoin will be worth enough money.
Right.
Or maybe he thinks that that's when people will finally start accepting Dogecoin as a currency. Like, he doesn't even have to sell it; he can just use the Dogecoin itself.
That's true. That's definitely possible. So yeah, if we're right about this, first of all, that'll be pretty incredible. But second of all, you're welcome. This is certainly investment advice, as we are financial advisors. Go out and buy Doge.
This is financial advice. But if it's not financially related,
Right.
Another reason I could think of is he has Hamilton tickets, and he wants to propose at Hamilton because Hamilton is so popular. You can't get tickets until 2029.
Right, that's a good one.
So it's possible that he wants to propose on that day because he wants to go to Hamilton and propose there.
Yeah, and I don't want to make this...
not propose, get married at Hamilton. I guess he already proposed because you're already engaged. So yeah, he wants to get married at Hamilton.
True. That'd be a pretty solid wedding, I think. Good for him if that's the reason. I mean, I'm sure we were all thinking this right at the beginning, so I at the risk of just saying the literal most obvious thing. You know how everybody has a favorite date as a kid?
Right.
Maybe it's just that simple. Maybe he's just thinking like, July 25th, 2029. It's always been there for me. I've really got to commemorate my wedding on this date. So it could just be that.
That's certainly a possibility.
Okay, so all that
so
being said, what do you do about this?
What do you do about this? Well, like I said, you first of all want to ask, and it obviously depends upon the reason, but let's assume that they're not able to resolve it by knowing the reason. Like, they find out the reason, and they say, well, this isn't a good enough reason for me to wait 8 years to get married.
Okay, yeah.
So if that's the case, I would say, that's a tough situation. I'm kind of stumped for the moment, which is very unusual for our podcast because of how qualified we are.
Right. All right, this is going to start off sounding pretty crazy, but I think by the time I'm done, you'll be able to appreciate the genius in this suggestion.
Okay.
Here is my idea. You need to start out by staying awake together for about 4 or 5 days straight. Mm-hmm. Now that'll be kind of challenging, I know, but
right.
That is absolutely key for the rest of the plan to work.
Right.
So, I guess even before that, you should have your target wedding date picked out and plan the wedding and stuff, or at least know the date. You have to know how many days it is until that date. Right. Then you stay up for 5 days without sleeping. And then, at the end of the 5th day, you finally go to sleep. And when you wake up, which is presumably, many hours later or maybe even a day later, I'm accounting for many possibilities here. The trick is you need to wake up before your fiance so that you can go around and change all of the calendars and the clocks and so on, so that when he wakes up, you can tell him that he slept for 6 years. And now you only have to wait 2 years to get married. Or, you can adjust those timelines based on your desired date. But right. I think you get what I'm saying, right? Like, you can just,
Okay, so that actually seems like a pretty foolproof plan. Mm-hmm. My one question would be, where are you going to get a 2027 calendar?
Yeah, that could be tricky, actually. I'm kind of curious. If I just look up 2027 calendar right now, I'm sure the internet will happily tell me about the 2027 calendar, but could I purchase one physically? And you know what? It looks, I haven't searched particularly hard, but it kind of seems like the answer is no.
Right. So you may have to prepare for this plan a little bit by hand drawing several 2027 calendars, or probably just one. I don't know how many calendars you have at your house, but maybe he has one at his office or whatever. So I think, and it's actually kind of funny because when you said go to sleep for 5 days, I actually thought of the same plan. I'm although in my version of the plan, you didn't actually need to stay awake for 5 days. You could have just changed all of these clocks and stuff overnight, like on a normal night while he was asleep.
Yeah, that's certainly the easier way to do it. I feel like you do run a slight risk of there being some suspicion, but probably it shouldn't be too hard to convince him.
Yeah, right? Think about this scenario, right? You wake up, Shelby tells you that while you were asleep, 7 years have passed.
Right.
Are you going to be suspicious?
You know what? I may be a little bit suspicious, but you know what the first thing I do is? I check the calendar.
Right.
So what does the calendar say?
It would say 2027.
All right, I'm sold.
Yeah, except that I fooled you because I said 7 years had passed and that would make it 2028, so you just got duped.
Oof. That is
so
bad math. Bad
I
job.
guess I just broke up your relationship, so I apologize. um,
So here's a fun fact, a kind of a
right.
parting fact before we move on.
Yep.
You know how some years have like the same dates on the same days as other years?
Yes.
So like because time is cyclical and the calendar is like a particular pattern, things repeat. And in fact, 2027 has the same dates on the same days as 2021. So, assuming
And
you already...
ones look like sevens, almost.
You have to do practically no work, assuming that you choose to... I know his preferred date is in 2029, so as long as you're willing to wait 2 years as opposed to 8, you could really speed this along with minimal effort. Like,
Yeah.
First of all, just go to bed normally, don't bother to stay up. And then second of all, just change the 1s to a 7 and
Yes.
you're basically done.
And just remember to say the correct number of years when he wakes up, like 6 years, not 7 years.
Right.
Okay, great question. Thank you for that question.
Yep. Plus sign.
Plus sign, right? I forgot the name.
Yep.
Okay, so who does this next question come to us from?
It's a weird coincidence. This next question comes to us from Tafi, like with an F.
Oh, okay. And keep in mind, as I read this question, that this is summarized by me in my own words. This is not
Sure.
what this person actually wrote.
Okay.
Hey, Alex and Alex. To be or not to be? That is the question. Whether 'tis nobler in the mind to suffer the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune, or to take up arms against a sea of troubles and by opposing end them. To die, to sleep no more. And by a sleep to say we end the heartache and the thousand natural shocks the flesh is heir to. 'Tis a consummation devoutly to be wished. To die, to sleep perchance to dream, aye, there's the rub. For in that sleep of death what dreams may come when we have shuffled off this mortal coil must give us pause. Mustn't it?
It mustn't.
I think it must.
Yeah.
No, I'm disagreeing with you. You said it mustn't. I said it must.
Oh, I just figured that was a fancy word for must.
No, mustn't is like must not. It's like in a contraction. Like isn't
Oh.
is not.
Wait a minute. Isn't is not?
Yeah.
Oh.
Grammar
like I've
police
been-
are teaching you a lot today, I guess.
I feel like I've been really confusing people with my work emails then.
I don't like you, and I can't believe you would do this. All right.
I don't want to do that. I won't do it.
And won't is a tough one, because, like, what are you trying to say? Won't?
I won't do it.
I won't do it.
Maybe that's not
okay.
the only reason I confuse people with my emails.
All right,
All
so
right.
you think it mustn't, or maybe you think it must, based on your confusion in the grammar.
Well, I feel like maybe it mustn't now that I've learned that word.
Right. Okay. So that's your current opinion is it mustn't.
I feel like I could be pretty easily swayed, but yeah, for now.
All right. So let me hear your reasoning behind why it mustn't.
Oh, man, I mean, just think about it, right?
Just so many reasons.
There's literally like I could name any number of reasons, like any number.
Like, think of a reason. That's one of the reasons.
Go ahead and try and prove me wrong.
All right. I'll do my best.
All right.
So I think it must. And why do I think that? Have you ever had a bad dream before?
Yeah, I have.
Check and mate. That's it. That's the reason.
That's the whole reason?
Yeah, if you've had a bad dream, then it must give you pause to shuffle, so whatever coil thing it says.
Mustn't it?
It must. I wouldn't want to. I wouldn't want to more coil shuffle off my mortal coil if. That sounds really dirty, but I wouldn't want to have my mortal coil shuffled off. if I thought I might have a bad dream.
That might turn it into a good dream.
Oh my goodness.
And that is why it mustn't.
And there's
I
the
rest
rub.
my case.
All right, let's go on to the next question.
Oh boy.
It says there's the rub. All right.
We've got guest question reader Shelby entering the room. Would you like to guest read a question?
Ask Shelby if it must give her pause or it mustn't.
Alex, before you read the question, which she just agreed to do, by the way.
Excellent.
Alex has a question for you.
Okay.
Yeah. So, a listener sent us a question about whether, in that sleep of death, what dreams may come when we have shuffled off this mortal coil must give us pause. Mustn't it? And I was wondering what your thought on that was. It must or it mustn't.
The coil give us pause?
Shuffling off the coil.
Oh,
or getting your
shuffling
coil
off the
shuffled. I'm so sorry. Just read the next question. This question comes to us from Mr. Table.
All right. Here's your question from Mr. Table.
Okay.
By the way, first name Mr. It's not like a title.
Right.
Gotcha. Okay, so the question is, I'm having problems with productive procrastination, where instead of doing my job, I fold pizza boxes. Unfortunately, I am a surgeon, and the other surgeons are starting to notice the excessive number of pizza boxes in the operating room when I'm done. How do I shake this habit?
Let's give it up for guest question reader Shelby. Well
Shelby,
done.
just so you know, the thousands of listeners are applauding for you, even though you can't hear them.
Right.
Oh yeah, that's good.
In like a week when this episode drops, just be really quiet. And about like 47 minutes after I upload this, you'll hear just the faint applause
Nationwide.
from your billions of fans.
Gotcha.
So,
That's good to know.
yeah.
Okay, so thank you for that question, Mr. Table.
Yeah.
What?
I don't think that's the name you said the first time.
It is.
Yeah, Mr.
Oh,
Table.
I
That's the name I said
Mr.
the first
Table.
time.
Yeah, that's not what you said just now. That's not what
No,
I
that
heard.
is what I said just now. What did you
Okay,
hear?
Well, your pronunciation was left to be, whatever the phrase is. Left
There was
much
much
to be
left to
desired.
be desired in my
That,
pronunciation.
You knew what I was going for.
Well, I'll
So
be
did the
interested to
millions
hear
of
the
listeners.
recording because I really felt like I just said it normally. So
I heard you correctly.
Okay.
Maybe her.
Maybe my earbuds.
I said it.
your
I said it on the
single earbud
right
is not-
speaker over here. I guess my
yeah.
computer's not
That'll,
has my
that'll
microphone.
do it.
Okay, so I cannot talk good. So I guess I would say right. So they're productively procrastinating by folding pizza boxes. My
Right.
question would be, how is that productive?
Have fun.
Thanks.
Well, somebody's got to fold up the pizza boxes, right? They don't just come folded.
Yes, that's true, but I would expect that people who work at pizza places would do that, not surgeons.
Not
So is he like-
surgeons. Okay, that's a good point.
So is he like then donating the pizza boxes to a pizza place, or is he selling them? Or does he just, I mean, it sounds like he's not doing anything with them. It sounds like they're accumulating in his hospital or whatever.
Yeah, that's the sense that I'm getting as well.
So I guess bad use of the word productive, because it sounds like this is just something you idly do while you're bored or not wanting to work.
This sounds like normal procrastination.
Yeah, and so I guess I don't really want to sully this podcast by giving reasonable advice about how to avoid procrastination. So I would say just stop procrastinating. Seems like the best option.
Yeah, I mean, you're a Mr. Table, Doctor Mr. Table, presumably.
Yes.
You're a surgeon. Certainly, you went to many years of school. You must be a pretty intelligent person. One of the few intelligent listeners we have, it seems. Listen, if you're writing to us about procrastination, as a medical professional, I feel like maybe you need to take a look at your career. Maybe you would be better suited working at a pizza box folding factory.
Yeah, we're not doctors, and this is not medical advice, but
right.
This is really advice for everyone except Mr. Table, Dr. Mr. Table, which is, if you show up to your doctor, because obviously, Mr. Table is a fake name.
Right.
So we don't know who this person really is. But if you show up to your surgery and you see a lot of, empty pizza boxes lying around, you maybe want to consider, going elsewhere for your surgery, because this person might just cut you open and then start folding pizza boxes.
Yeah, that's the risk you run, because I want to say, like, as a person who has been in this situation, minus the pizza boxes, I feel like that was a really poor way to begin my thought. Let me start over. As a person who has been to an operating room in order to be operated on, there's really not a whole lot of time between, like, you scanning the room for pizza boxes and them, like, knocking you out,
Right.
So,
and just
like,
out of curiosity, how did they knock you out at your surgeries? Was it like anesthesia, or was it, more conventional means?
No, it was pretty conventional, and I mean, I feel like usually they go just for the pillow on the face, But in the case of when I got my wisdom teeth out, obviously they can't cover your face,
right?
So they went for the blunt trauma to the back of the head, and it's interesting bringing up these memories now, because I'm telling you, if I had to describe what that felt like, it felt like getting hit on the back of the head with a pizza box.
That's interesting, because I was going to ask what they hit you on the head with, because, of course, the standard would be a bat, a baseball bat.
Yep.
But, I've seen, like, when I got my wisdom teeth out, they actually used a pipe. But I would say that neither of those things, I mean, I've never actually been hit in the head with a pizza box before, but I would assume that neither of those things actually feel like being hit in the head with a pizza box.
Yeah, so I'm questioning everything at this point. I've never considered this.
I actually do think the pizza box might work a little better as instead of the pillow for the pillow on the face method. You might be able to use a pizza box instead of a pillow. I don't know where I'm going with this. I guess make sure to bring some kind of self-defense so that if you do see the pizza boxes, you are able to escape before they knock you out.
Right,
That's the
so
bottom
good
line.
advice both for Dr. Mr. Table and for any patients unfortunate enough to enter his OR.
I forgot that we were supposed to be giving advice to the doctor first, and we just ended up giving advice to the patients of the doctor.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, we make our impact how we can,
Yeah, and as we said, we're not doctors, and this is not medical advice. Let's go to the next question, which comes to us from someone named
Jello.
You have to ask like a question like Jello.
Yeah, that's it.
Okay, just wanted to make sure that I got the pronunciation right. So Jello writes, Last Tuesday, I was getting my COVID-19 vaccine. Everything went smoothly, even the
Congratulations.
blood transfusion. However,
That's good.
afterwards, I was talking to some friends, and they thought it was weird that I had to provide a urine sample, among other totally normal things that go along with the vaccine. I pressed them, but they wouldn't give up the joke. So I'm wondering, are they serious? Do they really not have to learn an elaborate secret handshake with each of the nurses in order to get the vaccine? Or, if they are joking, why would they continue to keep it up even after I asked them to stop? Sincerely, I already forgot the name.
Jello?
Jello? Right.
Yeah, so I guess we were discussing before we started recording that you recently got your first shot. I've had mine.
Yep.
Um,
And
so I mean,
yeah, before we go into this, it definitely heavily depends upon which one you get, right?
oh yeah, definitely.
Like, the Pfizer one and Johnson & Johnson and Moderna, they're all going to have different, things you have to do to get the vaccine.
Right.
Um,
I was
so-
lucky enough, I know, to know which one I was going to get when I showed up, so that I could,
Mhm.
focus all of my practice on that.
right.
The one vocal performance rather than needing to, go through all the secret handshakes and so on.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I had to practice my cooking for like a week, and then
Yeah.
didn't even have to use it in the vaccine audition. So,
Yeah, that's a real shame. So,
but at least I can make brownies really well now.
yeah, I mean that some people say there's no benefit to being vaccinated. If you derive one benefit from a vaccination, it's potentially
Cooking
being able to
abilities.
make better brownies.
Indeed.
So,
Okay, but based on what this person said they had to do, we can kind of figure out that they got the Johnson & Johnson vaccine.
yeah, that would be my guess as well. It's actually the one I'm least familiar with, so this may be a little bit sketchy advice from my end of things, but
Mhm.
let's go ahead and give it a shot. So I guess we're not really giving advice about the actual procedures. It's more about the friends' reactions, right?
Right.
So obviously, I don't know what the statistics are right now. I want to say it's maybe like. Actually, I don't really want to say, because whatever I say is going to be wildly incorrect. So let's just say that there is some percentage of people that have been vaccinated right now. I'm going to say it's pretty likely that your friends. Did you hear that on the recording?
Yeah, I did. Yep. Well, I mean, I don't know if
Oof.
the recording heard it, but I heard it.
Yeah, that was. Don't know what that was all about.
I hope you
Um,
can't hear it on the recording, so it's just like us talking about some sound that no one heard.
Anyway, I don't remember what I was saying. I do remember what I was saying. They're probably in the denial stage of vaccine preparations. Like, I won't go so far as to accuse them of being, like, anti-vaccine or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
But, I many years ago, when I was first old enough to have to do the, pre-vaccine routine, it was a bit of a shock to get used to. So maybe your friends are just maybe for one, maybe they're just young people. I guess that's always a possibility. Or maybe they're just not very used to it. What do you think?
Well, first of all, for those curious, in the United States at the time of recording, we're at 42% of people have received at least one dose, and 28.9% of people are fully vaccinated. So, with that in mind, it seems unlikely to, like, my first thought when I heard this was, I don't really understand how these people could be serious. Like, there's been a lot of media coverage of the vaccine. As I said, like, 40% of people have at least one dose, meaning, like, even if you don't have it, you probably know multiple people who do.
Right.
And so it just seems so unlikely to me that these people, like, don't know what kind of procedures go along with getting the vaccine, even if they don't have it themselves. So I would say that it's incredibly unlikely that they're joking. On the off chance, or incredibly unlikely that they're, yeah, joking. Yeah, I said it right. So on the off chance that they are joking, just, send them some helpful links of information, right? Just in case, to make sure they're not, like, just total idiots.
Education is the vaccine for your mind.
Exactly. But in a much realer sense, not at all. So anyway, the in the more likely scenario where they are joking, I think that your only option, I mean, you have more than one option, but the only option that I would seriously consider would be to threaten them with a gun until they admit that they were joking. What do you think?
No, that's definitely the rational option. I would say that if you really want to get creative with it, you could also use a baseball bat. But really, that's as imaginative as I would get. This is really not one of those places where you want to be messing around too much. Yeah, so certainly would consider that pretty strongly if they are joking. Which, yeah, I agree. I think that's kind of the most probable situation that we would find ourselves in here.
Mm-hmm. Okay, let's go on to our second to last advice question, which comes to us from longtime listener Snowy Woodson.
Snowy Woodson, man, he's living quite an interesting life out there. Snowy, wherever you're at, hope you're doing well. Here's the question: somebody cut my hair last night while I was asleep. I live alone. What are my legal options?
What are your legal options? That's an interesting, very specific question. Okay, so first of all, we are not lawyers and this is not legal advice.
Right.
But what are your legal options? Well, unless you know who did it, pretty much you have no legal options. Because, you can't sue no one. You can't call the police on no one. I mean, you can call the police and tell them that somebody cut your hair.
That's a good point.
But, yeah, that's pretty much all you can do without knowing who did it. Now, we are talking about, a haircut here, which does focus the problem significantly. Like, there are certain people who are much more likely to have done it, if you know what I mean.
Absolutely,
you know what I mean?
I do. For sure.
Yeah, and no need to say what I mean, because everyone knows. But those, the fact that it's narrowed down to a certain group of people means that you do actually have a decent chance of figuring out who it was.
Right.
So if you do figure out who it was, then your legal options expand significantly. I mean, obviously you have joint custody as an option.
Right.
But
you're legally entitled to their hair, I believe, in some states.
Actually, that's true. Yeah, when I said joint custody, I was mostly just thinking of your own hair, which they clearly stole.
Right.
But, you can sometimes sue for their hair in some states and win that case. By the way, if you're outside the U.S., this probably won't make any sense to you, and you can just ignore this advice.
Right.
If you're outside the U.S., Snowy, send us an email, and we'll adjust our advice for whatever country you happen to be in. But in the U.S., yeah, like I said, joint custody, you can sue for their hair. And, of course, if the hair is non-recoverable, then you can get monetary restitution in the form of, monetary. which is different from mono, the disease, by the way.
Right. I would say, yeah, monetary is the preferred form of restitution.
Right. So
certainly
I
over
personally
mono.
have not received any monetary in my, I mean, I feel like this may be a little bit mean, but as a competent, normal person, my traps have caught anyone who have tried to cut my hair while I'm asleep.
Right.
So I haven't had to deal with the legal repercussions here, but yeah, definitely look for some monetary if you can. What do you think? I kind of just talked a bit for there.
Yeah, no, I'm 100% on board here. If there's one other piece of advice I would give, it's that I think you really nailed it. If you're able to identify the person who took the hair, those are some great options. If for some reason, for whatever reason, you remain unable to identify the culprit, just I would consider writing a letter to your Congress people, and urge them to not only make it illegal to cut people's hair while they sleep, but to amend the Constitution so that thing where, like, when you make a law, it can't be retroactively applied. They need to get rid of that so that you can catch the criminals who cut your hair.
Right. And what I would say is, actually, not all the listeners may know this, but you, Nathan, are a licensed private H, which is like a private eye, but for hair-related matters. So, Snowy, if you're still having trouble figuring out, who did this, you can send an email to Nathan privately, like not the podcast, because legally that would void it. But
Right.
Send a message to Nathan with the details and whatever his monetary retainer is, and he may be able to help you.
Yeah, I'm sorry to say, Snowy, that even though you're a loyal listener to the podcast, I won't be able to offer you the friends and family discount. You know what you did, but I will consider at least giving you a slight discount. I know my rates are very steep.
Indeed. Okay. So I think that answers Snowy's question for the most part. Let's go to our last question, which comes to us from...
This question comes to us from Hollywoo.
Hollywoo?
Yes.
Okay. Here, Hollywoo says, "Hi, Alex and Alex. Yesterday, I came back from the grocery store, and my kitchen was trashed. It didn't seem like anything was taken, so I just cleaned it up and moved on. But it happened again. After that time, I decided to set up a camera, and guess what I found out? My silverware is coming alive and trashing my kitchen. It really seems like they are mad about something. How can I stop this?"
First thing that comes to mind, I mean, I'm sure this is the first thing you checked, so sorry if I'm treating you a bit like an idiot here, but from some of these other questions, I mean, can you blame me?
Yeah.
Have you
90
checked to
days.
make sure that there is the same number of forks and spoons and knives? I mean, this is basic stuff, but like if you can't get that right, then I don't know what to tell you.
That's it. Yeah, that's a good point. I actually didn't even think of that because I kind of just assumed it was that they had that. So yeah. If
As
you
any
are,
person would, right?
And actually, as you say that, it makes me think more and more that's the problem, because this is a classic case of utensil imbalance.
Yeah.
This is exactly what you would see in that case. So, I guess if you really are an idiot and you didn't think about that, then there's your easy solution. But if you're not a total moron, my first thought would be, what kind of food did you make recently?
Right.
Because if you didn't really consult with your utensils before you made it, then, that can often be a big problem. Or if you are making a lot of food that doesn't use utensils, that can also be a problem, right?
Yeah.
I don't know where you live, but here where I live, utensils have unions, right? You can't just make a bunch of food that doesn't use utensils, because your utensils will go on strike and you won't have them when you need them. So
Right.
That's my first thought. What about you? Assuming they're not a total moron, what's your first
Assuming
thought?
they're not a total moron. So here's an interesting question. I'm not actually 100% sure that this would or wouldn't solve the problem, but it certainly wouldn't hurt. It might be kind of a step in the right direction to establishing a proper relationship with the utensils. I'm curious, like, relative to the other kitchen items, where is the utensils drawer? Like, are we talking like just to the left of the stove top, or are we talking like in the island? If you have an island, that can be a little bit sketchy. You got to be careful. If you are not storing your utensils in a drawer, I feel like you got to make sure to get that cleared by the unions. If that applies to you, that can be certainly a point of contention.
That made me think, like, how can I stop this? It actually might be a reasonable, and as you said, you have to clear this with the unions, but it may be a reasonable, security concern, and you can lock up your silverware so that when they come alive, they're just locked in a drawer.
That's true, yeah. The negotiation has to go both ways, so after all, you are the person. They're just animated silverware.
Yes.
It really comes down to it. I don't want to sound too harsh, but, that's the way it might have to be.
That's the way the cookie crumbles. All right.
Have you been crumbling cookies on your silverware? Maybe that's why they're pissed. I would be pissed if somebody crumbled cookies on me.
If I was a silverware and I was anywhere near cookies, I would be pissed. So
yeah, for sure.
All right. Well, I think that's all the advice questions we're tackling today. Thank you to all the listeners who sent in questions. If you sent in a question and we didn't get to it, we have too many. We'll get to it eventually. So yeah.
Hopefully, everybody got a little something out of this. Maybe you learned something. Maybe
you learned the difference between can and can't.
Ah, yeah, that was a good one. So, we all learn things, at the appropriate time.
Yes.
So, for sure, if this has inspired you to send in your questions, please do that. For sure, we would love to hear questions from all of our listeners, and we're excited always to receive your other emails as well. So
yeah, even if you don't have a question, send us an email.
Yep.
Okay, that's the end of the podcast. Thanks for listening, everybody. I'm Alex.
I'm Alex.
And this has been Joel.